What's up guys, Matt here with Churchfront again, and today I'm actually back at Palm City Presbyterian Church. We've been at this church before, but this time we're upgrading their chapel space with just a little bit of AVL. These are pretty cool in this space. We actually hung these Samsung frame TVs, and what's interesting about these is not only do they look really good, I'm telling you, these are probably the best looking TVs I've ever seen in my life. The matte finish on them is awesome because it reduces the amount of glare that you get off the TV, and so I really like these for displays for a small space. Now, these are not cheap TVs. I think these come in at around $2,500 per TV, but what's great about them and what they wanted to do is in this space, this is a very traditional, very historic looking space. So what they didn't want is when the TVs were off, giant black boxes on their wall. So what's great about these is that when you turn them off, they actually go to an artwork that you can set up in the TV itself. So you can have different kinds of artwork that show up when you turn the TVs off, so you're not stuck with a big black box on your wall in a gorgeous space like this. We also installed a stage display in this space. So now when the pastor's using this space as a small venue for their smaller services, he has notes up behind the congregation on the wall with a confidence monitor. As you can tell, this room still is very, very reverberous, but they did add some treatment to bring that down. It actually was considerably worse before we started. So these are the Prime Acoustic Broadway panels. These are the beveled panels, and these are actually the paintable panels. What's funny here is they got the paintable panels, and they might still paint them, but these aren't painted yet. They put them up in the space, and they liked the color offset so much it matched all the other white that they had in the room that they haven't actually painted these yet. But you can see there's a little bit of an eggshell texture to these so that they'll match most walls. And this is the second space that I've seen these beveled panels in, and I do like these beveled panels a lot. I like them a lot more than the regular square panels. So if you're doing a space and you want some acoustic treatment, but you don't want it to look like just square box acoustic treatment, I highly recommend these beveled panels. They do come in these different sizes. So you've got the 2x4 and then actually the 1x4 sizes, and they have a 4x4 size as well for these. So where I was standing at the beginning of this video was actually lit up by two Pro Church Lights Pro Wash fixtures. So they don't need a lot of light in this space. Obviously, it's a very, very small stage. I'd say it's maybe 15 feet across by 10 feet deep, but these two fixtures are going to light this stage up perfectly. They've got some barn doors on these lights to keep the light from going too high up the wall, but other than that, I think these lights are perfect, and we've got a really cool solution to how we actually are going to manage these lights in this location. Now, I am at the front side of the tech booth. This is one of those spaces that's weird because the sound booth, video booth, everything's all together in one space, and you got glass in the way. But what I wanted to show you is what this looks like from the backside here, because we've got actually a Mac Mini on a Mac cuff from Sonnet, and it sits on the back of the monitor, which I thought was a really cool way to manage the computer so that from the desk side, it's super clean and looks great. So because they were already spending quite a bit of money on the other space that we're going to show you in a couple months, they had to cut the budget down a little bit in this space, and we had to make some things work with a lower budget. So one of the things we did is we repurposed the rack they already had in place here. We added some network gear, we added a couple SLX microphones, and then we added a CQ12T mixer that sits here right on the desktop. We also installed this Mac Mini, and we installed this screen as well as a Stream Deck that I'm going to show you some cool solutions that we came up with to make all of these things function together. So one of the biggest things in this space was that they wanted it to be very, very easy for volunteers to run. So for services, when they do like miniature services in here, they will use ProPresenter, they'll use this other stuff, but they wanted to make sure that if they did an extra event, someone could come in and very quickly turn on some lights and turn on some microphones without really messing with a whole lot, because the people that use this space are not tech savvy at all. So I'm going to show you something. We're going to shut off this switch. So that killed the amplifiers and the wireless microphones, but let's say someone wants to use this space just as it is without any audio whatsoever. This can stay off, and if they just want some lights on stage, they can come in and they can push one of these buttons for a setting. I've got lights off, low, medium, and high. So if I push one of these buttons, you're gonna see it lights up the stage really, really well. And the way that this is running is actually, it's running Artnet, generic Artnet, straight out of Companion. So as long as the computer stays on at all times, we can really quickly fire these lighting settings. Now, if someone comes in and they have to use a microphone or they want to plug some music into this CQ mixer, all they've got to do is flip this switch on. That is going to turn on the wireless receiver units for the microphones, and it's also going to turn on the amplifier so that we can run some audio out of the CQ mixer. So one thing, I don't know if you know this about these CQ mixers, is that it actually can connect wirelessly via Bluetooth. So if I pull out my phone and I go to the CQ mixer and I connect to it, I can play some music directly from my phone to the CQ mixer. And if Chris comes over here to the mixer, he can show that there is volume coming through that channel, and I can obviously volume up and down on my phone, and you'll hear that coming from the speakers in the other room. Now, what I wanted to do in this space is, even though this is a pretty basic, easy mixer to use, I wanted to give them some options to mute and unmute and turn channels up and down straight on the same Stream Deck that we're controlling these lights from. So again, we're using Companion, the CQ Companion plugin, and I actually can really quickly, if I turn that volume back up, mute the Bluetooth straight on the CQ from this button. And then I did the same thing for the microphones that they're going to use on a normal basis. They've got their computer graphics channel, and if we show that over here on this side, you're going to see that as I click that button on and off, it unmutes the computer graphics. What I love about this is that they can't turn the volume up from this knob. If Chris backs up and shows you this, if it's muted, the knob doesn't work. That's one of the cool things you can do with Companion. If I unmute it, the knob works, and it's going to change the volume of that channel. Same thing, if I go back to the microphone channels here, I can unmute and mute those microphone channels, but if it's muted, I can't change the volume. But if it's unmuted, I can change the volume up and down on that channel using the Stream Deck with Companion. So one thing that we did in this space that I really like, I mentioned running Artnet directly from Companion. Now, some of you might not be familiar with Artnet. I'll show you basically how we get lighting control out of this computer into an Artnet network. Now, like we normally do, we are running the Unify networking gear here. What we have is a separate VLAN setup with a completely different set of IPs that does not have internet access, and that is important. Too much traffic on an Artnet network will cause issues. In fact, when we were setting this up, we were having some weird issues with blinking lights and stuff. That was happening because we didn't have an isolated network. So now we've got an isolated network, and if Chris comes over here and shows you these computer settings on this Belkin USB-C LAN, you'll notice it says it's not connected. That's because there is no internet here. But if I click on details, you can see it does have a 2.0 IP address on a subnet mask of 255.0.0.0. Now that is different than what you see on most networks. So we set that up so you have Artnet coming out of this computer using this Artnet plugin directly from Bitfocus. So what we have set up in Companion is these buttons actually tell channel 1 to set a value, a DMX value of 75 on the low, of 120 on the medium, and 200 on the high. So you can go all the way up to 255 on DMX. We're not going that high because these lights don't ever need to be that bright. So now this button sends a command over Artnet to an Artnet node that then translates that information into DMX for your DMX lights. And the way that Artnet nodes work is they connect to the same network as your computer that's on that Artnet network. And this actually is an Artnet node. This is really cool. This runs PoE, so power over Ethernet, from our switch. It's powered up from there, and it gets the data over that same network cable, and then it translates that Artnet information to DMX information. So this is how our information is coming from the computer, going out, getting translated to DMX, and then going out to the lights from here. And the great thing about Artnet, and this is why I like Artnet as a solution, is that anything on that network can send Artnet information. So you can have multiple consoles sending Artnet to the same node, and the Artnet node can be set up to basically take the last value sent to it as the priority, so that it knows that if something else sends it Artnet information, it takes over and starts using that data to program and control the lights. You can also set up Artnet nodes as highest takes priority. So what that means is if you have two devices sending information to an Artnet node, whichever is sending a higher value to a DMX channel is what's taken into account. One other thing that we did in this space, initially they wanted us to actually give them a solution for a new PA in the space, but that ended up not making the budget. So they had these PA speakers that were already up here. They had amps that were already in the rack. So we're repurposing their amps and PA. One thing they did have, you can probably see it maybe up on that beam up in the corner, is there's already some holes in that that beam. That's because those speakers were actually mounted one beam further back, and so it was a feedback nightmare. Basically, any open microphone on the stage would feedback. We moved them forward one beam, aimed them down so they're hitting the congregation in the space, and I think they sound a lot better than they did before we got here. That wraps up our tour of this really small chapel building here in Palm City at Palm City Presbyterian Church. We hope that you like this. We hope it gives you some ideas. If this video helped you in any way, make sure to like it and subscribe to our channel. Put a comment down what your favorite thing was, and we will see you in the next video.